Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only.
Taking care of plenty of business. Fantastically. Out of groovy sight. We're about ready to have a party.
Scratching like the Supreme Team with his hands.
Hot property!
Nobody can do it.
Good.
Hot property!
Nobody can do it.
Good.
Hot property!
Nobody can do it. Cause
Good.
Hot property!
Good.
The huge commercial success of Nevermind and Smells Like Teen Spirit turned Nirvana into overnight stars. This level of unprecedented fame took its toll on the band members and their punk rock philosophy.
Well, Nirvana took off faster than anyone was prepared for. Certainly Kurt wasn't prepared for that success, nor was Chris, nor was Dave. These guys had been in sort of struggling bands that had driven around the country in vans. And Nevermind was selling so fast in the fall of 1991 that there literally was shortage of it, of the record. You couldn't find it for about 2 weeks because it had sold out everywhere.
They just put out their first major label album, their second album total, Nevermind, which had sold an absolutely staggering quantity in very little time, which is something that nobody had expected or anticipated. They'd reacted to that sort of onrush and fame and success, it's fair to say, pretty badly.
This discomfort with their commercial success was further compounded by the unraveling of Cobain's personal life. Increasingly, the band were becoming uncomfortable with their celebrity status and with the album that had garnered them their success.
We got a lot of attention, you know what I mean? A lot of, like, Teen Spirit was kind of played into the ground, kind of made me feel a little self-conscious, you know. What do you guys think of Hysteria?
Oh, it's a load of shit.
You know, Nevermind was produced and recorded as a pop record by a rock band. And, you know, sounds like it. It obviously worked. You know, it did what it's supposed to do. It made the band radio staples. You know, the songs were very well recorded and very well produced pop tunes. But, you know, and I think the band, to some extent, felt that it didn't really capture what Nirvana was really all about, which was something a little more raw.
He was genuinely troubled by the kind of the commercial success that Nirvana had, primarily because he felt that now the vast majority of his listeners were the sort of people he hated, you know, sort of jocks and frat boys, the kind of people that probably made his life a misery at high school, you know, and these sort of bandwagon hoppers and all these kind of people he hated, and he wanted to get rid of what he saw as that kind of superfluous element of his fan base.
They hadn't expected to sell millions of records. They certainly hadn't expected to become this kind of pop band, and that worried Cobain in particular. I think he thought somehow that he himself had sold out without even trying, and they came from a scene which was underground in nature and underground in attitude, and if perhaps another band had done that, they'd have been the people saying, "Oh, those guys sold out. You know, they sold out to MTV." So they put themselves in that position. And when they came to thinking about making the follow-up, I mean, In Utero essentially is a flip middle finger to everybody who accused them of being, you know, pop sellouts.
I have a feeling with the next record, we're going to lose a lot of our audience.
I'm on my time with everyone. I have very bad posture. Sit and drink and
Against this backdrop of commercial pressure and punk rock authenticity, Nirvana quickly began writing and recording a more raw and aggressive album. It was this record that would eventually be called In Utero. Among the first demo time booked for the new album was a session at the end of 1992 with Bleach producer Jack Endino.
The demoing, well, of course, I didn't know that it was going to be called In Utero. Nobody knew yet because it was a year and a half, away. This was in, I think it was September of 1992. They called me up, and this was right about the time that Francis was born, Francis Bean. They called me up, they booked the time, and then they canceled at the last minute because the baby had just been born. And then a few weeks later, they rescheduled. And they actually, Dave and Chris showed up along with a couple of their sort of roadies, technicians, whatever, and they set up, and then Kurt didn't show up. The second day, he finally showed up in the evening, and they bashed out 6 songs instrumentally, very quickly. And then Kurt sang on one of them, which was Rape Me.
Rape me, my friend. Rape me.
Dave was so loud that we had a noise complaint at the studio, which was the first time we had had a noise complaint in 5 years at that building. And it was from a neighbor that was like several houses away, because the police came. And much to my amazement, the police came and knocked on the door, and I had to say, well, I'm recording Nirvana in here, and they said, well, we don't, care who you're recording. There's this guy through, down the street, and they pointed at a house. He's complaining about the noise, and I'm thinking, wow, I guess Dave is pretty loud. So, fortunately, we were about finished by then, and we just went ahead and did the last song, and that was the end of that. Once they actually were playing, it was pretty easy, pretty routine. They just went through the songs. It's just too bad Kurt didn't bother to sing on any of them, because I didn't really get to hear them as songs until the In Utero record came out. Years later, I was like, oh, that's how that song goes, because I didn't hear, no lyrics, no melodies, just some guitar riffing and drumming. So it was a pretty inconclusive session.
By 1993, Nirvana were ready to record the new album. Their search for punk rock authenticity had led them to Steve Albini, both a respected recording engineer and controversial musician in his own right.
The decision to go with Albini was sort of presented as being about the Albini sound, but it was actually about much more than that. It was actually a sort of complete ideological package and a way for Nirvana to say, look, we might have made it, but we're still true to where we're coming from. I mean, now Albini, what's most often tends to mention, of course, that he'd produced the Pixies, who were Nirvana's favourites, and that's kind of a straight thing. But more importantly, Albini had been a key figure in kind of taking on the legacy of hardcore punk. Kind of exploded in about the mid-80s.
During the early 1980s, Albini had formed an influential and inflammatory punk band, which went by the moniker of Big Black.
Groups like Big Black, the guitar sound is huge. They've got these massive sort of open sluices of sort of jet black sound that are coming out. It's a sound that's got a very kind of punkish attitude, but at the same time, it's like harking back to, unashamedly, to the sort of massive sounds that you get with people like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. So they're one of a number of bands who are kind of almost like in rock's sort of supposedly latter years, they're kind of suddenly massively sort of extending its kind of, its lexicon, its vocabulary, and sort of raising the sort of volume and temperature of rock music the way that Hendrix had done maybe 20 odd years earlier.
Despite other musical projects, including the extremely controversial Rape Man and more artistically successful Shellac, Albini moved into record production, applying the same philosophy of creative simplicity to the recording process as he did to his own music. Albini has attracted the likes of the Pixies, PJ Harvey, Godspeed You Black Emperor, and more recently Will Oldham to his Chicago studio.
Steve Albini is a no-nonsense producer almost to the point of caricature. He does produce all sorts of different sorts of music, which is often forgotten about him, and he has in his time. I mean, he even made a country record with Robbie Fulks once. But he does bring a very similar sensibility to everything he does, which is there's no frippery, there's no frills, everything is done as sparsely and as simply as it can be. And he has a very rigidly anti-commercial ethos, which is not to say that he is he's against making records that people might actually like and people will want to buy, but he's very careful to guard against any hint that that's why he's making the music, to the extent that he has, as far as I'm aware, career-long policy of never accepting royalties for work on his record. He takes a flat fee. I'm sure in the case of a band like Nirvana with Geffen's backing, it's not an inconsiderable flat fee, but he doesn't take it makes no difference to him financially whether the record he's made sells 100 copies or 100 million copies.
The key element of the Albini package was that you go to his studio, you make the record in 2 weeks, do the whole thing, and he's not credited as the producer because he regards that as a decadent pre-punk indulgence. It's recorded by Steve Albini.
With Steve Albini on board, Nirvana entered the studio in February 1993 and quickly completed the album in half the time it had taken to record Nevermind. However, despite the smooth recording process, there were to be some complications over the record's final mix.
California Blackouts, boxing, take 1-3-1.
He's hitting you with his left. Keep your right up. He's hitting you with his left. Get in there. Come on, Rocky. Come on, Rocky. Rocky, he's hitting you with his right. Keep your left up. Keep your left up. Get in there, Rocky. Come on, Rocky. He's hitting you with both hands. Both hands. Keep both hands up. Kill him. I'll kill him. Attaboy, Tiger. Get me abroad. Your ass!
You ever try to fool with your wife with boxing gloves on? Gotta figure out something new. It's getting boring and regular.
Okay, here we go. Let's get right with it, Don Rickles. Here we go, buddy.
Oh, look at this. We got Newt Rockney in the booth.
Gentiles have to do all this crap. He thinks it's a bar fight.
California Blackouts, boxing, take 1-3-2.
Hey, was everything all right with that one?
I don't know. My makeup wasn't. Oh, sorry.
So he wasn't ready?
I didn't know we were on.
Hold it! He wasn't ready! Cut the tape! He wasn't ready. Now give him a minute.
Makeup!
Makeup! Bring in the makeup. He had a trickle running down the side.
Perspiration on me from when you dropped.
Hi, God.
Is my hair all right, Ray? Okay, let's go.
How's his teeth, Ray?
Quiet, please.
Hold it. Check that out.
California Blackouts, boxing, take 1-3-3.
You'll know when you're on when I fall on your... Rocky, he's hitting you with his right. Keep your left up. Get in there. Keep your left up. Come on, Rocky. Come on, Rocky. Rocky, he's hitting you with his right. Keep your left up. Keep your left up. Come on, Rocky. Get in there. Come on, Rocky. He's hitting you with both hands. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. I'll kill him.
Attaboy, Tiger.
We stepped on each other's lines. Because he was lifting his hands. Keep your hands down.
Shut up!
Don't talk on my lines. Say I'll kill him and then wait for me to say my line and keep your hands down so the camera can see the hit. Go get him, Tiger. You're doing great, boy.
He had this ability to bottom line everything by pulling focus and showing you the cosmic world of this galaxy, and there you were suddenly, just this little person with his own little problems, fretting away on the surface. So I had heard a little about George liking Python, and I'd been a bit wary, because I don't want to know about somebody famous, and but we had the screening of the Holy Grail, and it went really well, and suddenly there he was going, this is fucking great, come on. And he said, let's go upstairs, and then we started a dialogue which went on for about 48 hours.
You like your classic rock loud. You want to peel paint. Break glass. Classic rock loud.
Put it up to 11, exactly.
It sounds a little more rock and rollish.
It's catchy, you know what I mean? Captain Freezknot here with another Captain's Classic Rock Case Studies. In 1975, George Harrison became really good friends with Monty Python. It had been said by John Lennon and other members of the Beatles previously that when the Beatles ended, the spirit of their creativity, humor, style, whatnot, was carried on and continued by Monty Python. George Harrison had always been a big fan of Monty Python's television show, and subsequently a huge fan of the show that Eric Idle did after Monty Python, Rutland Weekend Television. He was such a fan of Monty Python that he paid the most anyone has ever paid for a movie ticket to see a movie, $4 million. That's tonight's classic rock case study, Harrison's handmade films, and how he was the one who handmade Monty Python's movie career.
It was extraordinary. I mean, it was like... Well, George was very fond of Rutland Weekend Television. On Rutland Weekend Television, we did a send-up called The Ruttles. It was like a hard day's rut. We were on Abbey Road filming, and I'm dressed as Paul, and then Neil is dressed as Ron, as John, with a huge big bearded tie. And we're there, we're on Abbey Road, and these people come, you're the Beatles, you're the Beatles. And it's like 20 years later, you think they're still here, And then, but George is standing with us, and they don't recognize him. He's laughing his ass off, because we're getting signed autographs, and they don't notice it's George. Existence is kind of funny, because of our temporality. It's all, here we go around pretending to be kings and emperors, and you're going to die. You're in a box in a minute or two, So we are constantly undercut by our own physicalities, our own physical bodies, which let us down. And you find all these evangelicals, and suddenly they're having gay sex in Aspen. Oh, this body's letting me down all the time. It's like, that's what makes us funny. George's grounding in what was both true and what was, he would test things by what made him laugh or what was close to his heart.
I've always been surprised that Python has proved to be as long-living as it has, because we were just having fun, just like they were having fun. We were entertaining ourselves. We weren't actually thinking about the audience. It's like John Lennon said, you're still fucking peasants to me. Certain things, there was a kind of arrogance there that you're not out there to, want to be loved so desperately that you'll do anything. It's about maintaining your own integrity and your own view of the world, whatever that is, and trying to be truthful about it. We'd written Life of Brian. We had EMI putting up the money for the movie. We had designed it. We were heading out on the Saturday with the crew to Tunisia to start building. And on Thursday, we get a call. And Lord Delfont Burney, to his friends, had finally got around to reading the script, apparently. He hadn't read it before. And he was shocked and horrified. And he said, there's no way EMI is going to be involved in this blasphemous, filth. And they pulled the plug on the Thursday. And we were dead.
And I'll be calling into George. He said, no, I'll pay for it. And I thought, yeah. And all the time he said, no, I'll take care of it. And I thought, yeah, we were looking for $4 million. I thought, nobody has that amount of money, But eventually, when we finally got to California, George says, yeah, I figured it out. We're going to create, a company, and we're going to give you the money. And it's $4 million. And he'd mortgaged his house. to put up the money for this movie because he wanted to see it, which is still the most anybody's ever paid for a cinema ticket.
Should I fly to Los Angeles? Find my asshole brother. Mickey Mouse has grown up a cow. Dave's on sale again. Kiss a kiss in the rear view. We're so bored you're to blame. Trust you once my way. Everything's in, everything's in. I don't think so. Everything's in, everything's in. I don't think so. Rain Dog's hell for the century. $1 million at stake. As you search for your demigod, and you fake we're the saint. There's no sex in your violence. 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 Trust you once my way. Everything's in, everything's in. I don't think so. Everything's in, everything's in. I don't think so. Everything's in.
line as I take your mind off and on to a new track. To tame ducks how to act, respect me when I whoop your brain, skip your brain and dip your brain in a lotion while I deck your skull. I'm like a bird when I'm pecking your skull to it hurt and swell, puff, bleed, blood patches down, covering knots for eye jamming. I'm taking your brain from the back. I'ma pull out your ears cause I'm sick. Traveling hard, ill, off, another lunatic, smacking germs, eating bugs, biting mouse. Roaches wander while I'm traveling on to Bellevue cause I'm sick. Traveling hard at the speed of thought. Think about it again from the galaxy. Planet 16 Ultra, Mega Tip, plus the Gamma Tip, Power Tip, to make your brain flip through the atmosphere. Deep in outer space with a helmet. I'm looking for the elements. I'm not out to ill and on the ill tip. I like to party and hardy and know the real tip. I'm just traveling hard at the speed of thought.